That night, I was sitting at the kitchen table, pen in hand, double-checking my Medicare statements and the pre-op checklist the doctor had mailed me. My hip replacement surgery was scheduled for July, a date I had waited a year to secure. Insurance would cover part of it, but the remaining $7,000 out-of-pocket cost had been sitting safely in a dedicated savings account I opened just for this. Eric's call came out of nowhere. "Mom, we're taking Madison's parents to the Maldives next month. Just a week to relax." I thought I'd misheard. "Where?" "The Maldives," he said casually. "We just booked the flights and the hotel. It's one of those all-inclusive places. Snorkeling, spa treatments, the whole deal. Madison's parents have never been abroad, and we want them to really enjoy themselves for once." I couldn't speak right away. My throat tightened. "You're telling me this now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah," he said without the faintest trace of guilt. "Everything's confirmed. We just want a break, you know? Her parents are getting older. We didn't want to wait too long." "What about Caleb?" I asked. "Oh, you and Dad will take him, obviously. He's always glued to you two. It's not like it's the first time." He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. But what truly froze my heart wasn't their travel plans. It was the answer to the question I asked right before he hung up. "Where did you get the money?" There was a pause. "I took some from that medical fund card you have. You said if I ever really needed it, I could use it." My brain exploded in a silent scream. That was the fund I'd scraped together for over a year. I never said it could be used in an emergency, to fund a beachside escape under palm trees. That card was for the surgery deposit, the private recovery nurse, the hospital bills. Not for a vacation down payment. I didn't even have time to react before I heard laughter on the other end of the line. Bright, carefree laughter, as if they were already imagining the sea breeze in their hair. "It's settled then, Mom," he said. And hung up. I sat there, my fingers clenching the pen so tightly my knuckles turned white. Frank walked over from the couch, his brow furrowing when he saw my face. "What happened?" I looked up, voice hoarse. "They used my surgery money. For the Maldives." He was silent for several seconds before murmuring, "They've lost their damn minds." Friday night, Caleb finally cried himself to sleep. I laid him gently in his crib, tucked a blanket around him. His lashes were still wet with tears. He mumbled something incoherent in his sleep while I stood there, feeling like I'd been dragged through a minefield of exhaustion. My back throbbed so badly I couldn't stand up straight. Frank crouched behind me, rubbing my lower back. Even his voice was drained. "This kid runs like he's got a motor in him." Was up before sunrise. I glanced at the wall clock, 10:30 p.m. From the moment I opened my eyes at 6, I hadn't sat down for more than a few minutes. 3 meals, countless tantrums, naps that took forever to coax, and a mountain of soaked toddler underwear to wash. All because they said, "You've got experience." My hair looked like it had been frosted by age. My cheeks were so dry they'd started to flake. I hadn't had time to get a haircut in months. The woman staring back at me in the mirror looked 10 years older than I really was. Just as I was massaging my throbbing temples, the door opened. Eric was home from a long day at the office. He changed his shoes and walked straight to the couch without a word. Turned on the TV. His favorite sports channel was playing, a crowd cheering over a three-pointer. Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't called the day before to tell me he'd helped himself to the savings card I'd set aside for surgery and rehab. That card I had filled dollar by dollar over the course of a year for one single purpose: to pay for my summer hip replacement and everything that came after. I stared at him for a while. He was perfectly relaxed, one leg propped on the coffee table, completely oblivious to the way I was looking at him. "Did you eat dinner?" I asked. "Not yet, Mom. Just whip up some noodles or something," he said without turning around, still flipping through channels. I didn't answer. I stood up and walked into the kitchen. Frank followed me in, his face just as dark. "Let me handle it. You're worn out. You've got to be up early tomorrow to get Caleb a spot at the playground," I said, stopping him with a hand on his arm, reaching for the pot myself. We both knew what the other was thinking. At this point we didn't need words. There was plenty of anger, but it wasn't time to let it show. Not yet. Just as the water started to bubble, Eric walked in and leaned against the doorframe. "Is Caleb still fussing?" "He just fell asleep," I said, not looking up. He nodded like we were chatting about the weather. We're thinking of enrolling him in a swim class once we're back. I gripped the spatula tighter. He was still talking about after the vacation. Like it was all set in stone. Frank was still in the kitchen, eyes narrowing. He glanced at me but said nothing. I asked, "Why didn't you arrange daycare for Caleb while you're gone?" He shrugged, smiling as if it were obvious. "We figured you guys would take care of him. And honestly, Madison's parents really deserve to see more of the world. They've never gone anywhere since retiring." I gave a small laugh, cold as steel. "And do you think maybe we deserve to see the world too?" He didn't answer. Just stared down at his phone. The air turned heavy like it had been sucked from the room. I thought back to the night he'd called. I hadn't slept a wink. I just stared at the bill on my nightstand that read orthopedic surgery estimate across the top. It had taken me 14 months to get that appointment. The doctor said if I didn't get the surgery and fell again, I might never walk on my own again. I didn't want to die, and I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in a bed. But now that surgery fund had been traded in for sunshine, bungalows, and ocean breezes. My throat tightened, my chest felt like it had a brick lodged in it, but not a single tear came out. "Mom, hurry up with dinner, will you?" "I'm starving," he called out. I turned off the burner, served the noodles, and said nothing. He went back to the couch, eating while watching the game, slurping away as if the world was perfectly in order. Never once glancing at the silence stretching between Frank and me like a noose. That night, Frank and I lay side by side in the tiny guest room at Eric's place, neither of us sleeping. The room was small and dim. The curtains never fully closed, and in the summer it felt like a sauna, in winter a meat locker. Cold air always seeped through the corner of the wall like something alive trying to crawl inside your bones. We had moved from Vermont to help with Caleb, to take pressure off their shoulders. And what we ended up with was this closet-sized room that could barely hold one bed, let alone two. Frank turned onto his side and whispered, "Grace, maybe just let this one go. Watch Caleb for a few days. No need to put him in the middle." I stared at the narrow beam of moonlight filtering through the blinds, thin as a ribbon, wrapping tighter and tighter around my chest. "Frank, how long are we going to keep sacrificing ourselves?" All the compromises I'd made over the years started flashing in my mind like a grainy old film. Frame by frame. All of them soaked in resentment. When Caleb was born, I dropped everything in Vermont, our garden, our friends, and came here with 2 suitcases to help Madison recover. She'd had a C-section and was slow to heal. I cooked every meal with precision, referencing postpartum guides, counting every calorie, every gram of fat. And what did she say? "Grace, this is way too greasy. Doesn't look very healthy." Before I could reply, she shoved her iPad at me. "Here. This is the nutrition plan my doctor recommends. Just follow it." I glanced down at the list. Kale puree, flaxseed bread, salmon mousse. Half the ingredients I'd never even heard of. But I went out and bought every last thing she asked for, even if it meant riding 3 buses just to find a store that sold non-dairy Greek yogurt. And still not a single thank you. When Caleb turned 1, things didn't get easier. They got worse. She said I held him wrong, that it might affect his spinal development. Said I dressed him too warmly, that I was cooking a ration to him. Said the baby food I made wasn't blended enough, that it was too rough for his digestive tract. Every single thing. She nitpicked every step I took in that house, always ending with, "I read about it." As if I'd raised Eric 30 years ago by blind luck. And Eric? He always repeated the one line I'd heard so many times I could recite it in my sleep. "Mom, Madison just wants what's best for the baby. Can't you be more understanding?" Understanding? My entire pension was practically funneled into their household. Groceries, diapers, detergent, baby shampoo, you name it. And Madison? She swapped out luxury handbags like clockwork. Her skincare stash was overflowing from the bathroom cabinet, every bottle marked with a 4-digit price tag. Their mortgage was $3,600 a month, the car loan another $700. Eric's paycheck barely cleared $5,000 and Madison brought in maybe 4. On paper it didn't sound bad. But between the loans, the kid, and their obsession with traveling abroad, they were always running on empty. Every month, like clockwork, the act would begin. Madison would sigh and say, "Mom, the bills are really piling up this month." I wouldn't ask a single question. I'd just walk to the drawer, grab the passbook, and head to the bank. It started once. Then twice. Eventually, it became a monthly ritual, an unspoken subsidy I was expected to provide. As if we'd co-signed their mortgage. As if we owed it to them. When Eric lost his job for a few months, they didn't even hesitate to ask us for help. We bit the bullet and pulled our last $50,000 from our retirement account. They never once mentioned paying us back. Not because they forgot. Because they never truly saw us as people who deserved gratitude. Last month I caught a nasty flu. My whole body was chilled to the bone. That night Caleb cried non-stop, refusing to sleep. Completely drained, I turned to Madison and said, "Can you take him tonight?" "I really can't." She was sprawled out with a face mask on, scrolling through her phone. She didn't even look up. "Grace, can you hang in there? I've got an early meeting tomorrow. I won't be productive if I don't sleep." Then she added, "And anyway, Caleb's more attached to you. I can't calm him like you do." That night, I burned with fever and still rocked Caleb in my arms until dawn. The next morning at the grocery store, I nearly fainted in front of the freezer aisle. A young woman passing by caught me just in time. All our sacrifices had become invisible. Default settings. And the moment we stopped, we were the problem. Frank let out a long sigh beside me, voice low. "I know it's eating at you. But Eric's stuck in the middle. It's not easy for him either." I gave a dry laugh and sat up sharply. "Not easy? He's 36, not 3. If he's still stuck in the middle, it's because he chooses to be. He's a grown man. Why can't he speak one honest word on our behalf?" Frank didn't reply. But his eyes flickered, half in agreement, half in resignation. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, sliding into my slippers. My voice was calm, firm. "They're going to the Maldives. We're going home." Frank sat up, startled. "You mean now?" "Yes," I said, turning to him. "We have our own home. Why are we stuck here swallowing this crap? This house is theirs. We're just the guest. Caleb is their child. We're just helping out. If they've made it clear they don't care, then we're no longer obligated to." Frank went quiet for a moment. Then he took a deep breath and nodded hard. "You're right. It's time. God, I've nearly forgotten what our apple tree in the backyard even looks like." The moment we made that decision, I felt lighter. Like a switch had flipped, calm, almost gleeful vengeance rising inside me. We didn't need to shout. We didn't need to argue. Why should we keep bending to their selfishness? Why should our lives orbit their little universe? I even started to wonder, when Madison realized we were gone, would that ever-composed face of hers finally crack? The next morning I woke up at 5. The house was still, the sky outside still dark. The only sound was Caleb's soft breathing. Eric and Madison's bedroom door was shut. If their routine held, they wouldn't wake until at least 8. Breakfast, of course, was still mine to make. No one ever asked. No one ever thanked. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, studying my face. Tired. Sallow. The fine lines around my eyes etched in deep like carvings. I'd had enough of this life. I turned back into the bedroom and grabbed my phone. Frank leaned over. "What day should we leave?" he whispered. I lowered my voice too. "The day before they fly out. April 28th. Let's give them something real nice to come home to." Frank let out a real laugh, wide, toothy, yellowed from years of smoking. But it was the happiest I'd seen him in ages. "Perfect. Let's do it." As I hit the confirm button on the booking screen, I felt something inside me crack open. All those years spent swallowing my voice in this house, it was like every last stone dropped to the floor. The next few days I went about everything as usual, cooking, laundry, bedtime routines. But inside, every task ticked like a countdown. Eric and Madison, meanwhile, were swept up in their vacation prep. Brand new UV protective clothes, snorkeling gear, even maps of the best boutique diving spots in the Maldives. They were drunk on anticipation, completely blind to the shift in air around them. They even had the audacity to remind me, "Mom, while we're gone, don't forget to water the balcony plants. And Caleb's clothes, don't mix them with yours in the wash. His skin's sensitive. Use that organic baby detergent, okay?" I smiled and nodded, all the while thinking, I can't wait to see your faces when you walk into an empty house. Early on the morning of April 28th, we quietly placed our packed bags by the door. Caleb was still fast asleep. We didn't wake him. I took one last look at the kitchen, the living room, the balcony. Every corner I'd once cleaned, cooked in, carried a crying baby through. It felt like a silent farewell to years of unspoken labor. We didn't tell anyone. No notes. No goodbyes. We simply walked out. The taxi waited at the corner. The driver helped load our luggage into the trunk. Frank gave my shoulder a gentle pat. I nodded, shut the car door and let out a long breath. As the train headed south, the city skyline faded into the distance beyond the window. I felt something I hadn't felt in years: relief. Not the kind that comes from running away. The kind that comes when you finally stop living someone else's life. By afternoon we arrived home. The air smelled like soil and grass and cherry blossoms just beginning to bud. It was the kind of air you couldn't breathe in the city. Pure, wild, free. The rusty gate creaked open. Everything looked just as we'd left it 3 years ago, quiet and familiar. The apple tree in the backyard was still there, its branches even fuller now. There were weeds along the fence, and the wind chime on the kitchen window was coated in dust. But as I stood there, my eyes stung with emotion. We put down our bags. Frank grabbed his tools, I picked up a bucket. He went to patch the backyard fence. I began scrubbing the windowsills. We hummed as we worked, lighter than we'd felt in years. Sunlight poured across the wooden floor of our old home, carrying the scent of hay and hibiscus blossoms. It didn't take long before a familiar voice called from outside the yard. "Oh my Lord, Grace and Frank are finally home." I turned around to see our neighbor Betty Dawson, holding a basket of tomatoes and carrots on her arm. "The whole block's been buzzing about you too," she laughed. I practically ran over the minute I heard. Old Ed from next door popped his head over the fence and said he'd bring by some pickled cucumbers later. Within an hour, old friends were knocking on the door one after another, all smiling, all welcoming us back like family. Someone brought a pumpkin. Another came with cupcakes. One invited us over for a drink that night. "Welcome home, Grace." This was home. No phones ringing off the hook. No daughter-in-law watching my every move in the kitchen. No grandson crying for grandma at 2 a.m. The air was free. The days belonged to us again. I stood in the doorway, gazing at the empty patch in the backyard, already planning it out in my mind. Roses. Cucumbers. My favorite flat-leaf parsley. But the peace lasted only a day. The next afternoon, just as I was about to turn the soil in the yard, my phone, left on the living room table, started vibrating like crazy. The buzzing was so intense it felt like an alarm. I walked inside and saw Madison's name lit up on the screen. I inhaled slowly and pressed answer. "Grace. What the hell is this?" she screamed, her voice piercing enough to rattle my eardrum. Even Frank, out in the yard chopping wood, stopped and turned toward the house. "You seriously ran off without a word? Do you have any sense of responsibility? What are we supposed to do about Caleb? Our flight's tomorrow at noon. The Maldives. Everything's booked. Flights, resort excursions. Do you even understand what this is costing us? You need to come back. No. Are you really going to ruin our entire trip?" Her questions flew like bullets, rapid fire, not even pausing to let me answer. I stood there, eyes fixed on the apple tree bathed in sunlight outside the window. My pulse steady. And when she finally paused to breathe, I spoke. My voice was cold, measured. "Madison, do I need your permission to go back to my own home? Caleb is your child. Not ours. We're not your full-time nannies. We're not your servants." The other end went quiet for a few seconds, then exploded again, louder and more frantic. "You're retired. You don't even work. What's so hard about helping out with your own grandson? You're the ones who said you wanted to be here. And now you just bail. You agreed to help with the mortgage too. Don't act like that never happened." My hands shook with rage. Agreed? Was that what she called those nights she sobbed, begging us to stay? Saying she couldn't manage on her own? That she was slipping into depression? Was that what she called it when she grabbed my hands and said if I stayed, she'd treat me like her own mother? All of it, a performance. I swallowed my fury, then delivered each word slowly, clearly. "Madison, don't rewrite history. We said we'd help when you were struggling. We never said we'd pay off your house for life. You chose to go on vacation. That's your freedom. But if you didn't plan for your child's care, that's on you. And no, we're not coming back. This is our home. And we're staying." There was silence on her end, then an explosion. "Grace Whitman. Just you wait. If you won't come back, we'll send Caleb to you. You're destroying our marriage. You're destroying our lives. I'm having Eric call you right now. You'll regret this." And with that she slammed the phone down. I stood there, phone still in my hand, my palms slick with sweat. Frank walked over, sawdust clinging to his hands. He gave my shoulder a gentle pat and spoke softly, almost in a whisper. Grace, don't let this get to you. It's not worth it. I gave a tired smile and shook my head. I'm okay. Just, never thought her skin could be that thick. Some people, the more you give, the more they take. They don't stop until they've backed you into a corner. And only then do they realize you have teeth. Sure enough, not even 5 minutes passed before the phone buzzed again. The name Eric lit up the screen, glaring and bright. My chest tightened like something had dropped onto it. I answered, forcing my voice to stay even. Mom, he started, sounding as worn out as ever. Madison, she was just upset. Don't take it personally. There was again. The same old refrain. She's got a temper. Just try to understand. We've already paid for everything, the flights, the hotel. Canceling now would be a huge loss. Can't you just help us out and watch Caleb for a few days? Just 1 week. We'll be back before you know it. The way he said it, like it was a given, made my blood run cold. Help you? I finally spoke, my voice calm but sharp. Eric, from your wedding to Caleb's birth, have we not helped? We dipped into our retirement fund to cover your mortgage, your formula, your jobless stretch. And you, have you ever remembered that? Your wife treats us like what? Hired help? A personal ATM. She bosses me around the kitchen like I'm her assistant. Trashes the meals I cook right in front of me, doesn't even fake a smile. And you? Where were you? She picks through baby items I buy and calls them outdated or not organic enough. Where were you then? Eric, you're not a child. You're a father. A husband. Are you really planning to spend your life cleaning up after her? The other end went quiet. 30 seconds passed before he spoke again, barely audible. Mom, I know you've done a lot for us. Really. But Madison, she's always been like this. Her parents spoiled her, you know that. She doesn't mean harm, she just talks rough. You could just let it go. We're family. Why say things we can't take back? As for the mortgage, we'll figure it out when we're back. Just, please don't be mad. Just come back, okay? In that moment, any last ember of hope inside me finally went out. Let it go? I'd let it go so many times I was ashes already. Eric, I said, my voice quiet and cold as ice over a pond, I've spent a lifetime swallowing things for the sake of peace. I've carried this family longer than you know. And the time I have left? That's mine now. Enjoy your trip to the Maldives. Caleb is your son. Figure it out. The mortgage, your responsibility, not ours. I'm tired. I'm going to rest. I hung up before he could reply. More often than not, the breaking point between a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law isn't caused by open war. It's caused by the man standing between them, always silent, always neutral, always absent. Eric's cowardice, his refusal to step up, had poured gasoline on every fire in our home. That's when I knew I couldn't count on him anymore. Barely 2 minutes later, my phone exploded again. Message after message. Notification after notification. Madison's name popped up like a rash on the screen. Voice notes. Texts. Each one more nauseating than the last. Grace Whitman, how could you be this cruel? Are you trying to ruin our trip on purpose? If you don't come back today, I'm dropping Caleb at your doorstep tomorrow. Let's see if you open the door. You promised to help with the mortgage. Don't play dumb now, won't work. Reading her words made my stomach turn. Oh. The entitlement. The threats. This was the same woman I once spoon-fed soup to while she cried in my lap. The one who told me she'd treat me like her own mother, if I stayed. This was the woman my son had handpicked, swearing she was his future, his happiness. I set the phone to silent and tossed it onto the couch like it was poison. Out of sight. Out of mind. For dinner we kept it simple. I made Polish dumplings. My specialty. They came out just right, tender with a little bite. But every mouthful felt like I was chewing wood. That night I lay in our old wooden bed. The mattress sagged in the middle and the frame creaked against my back. I couldn't sleep. There was no city glow outside, just starlight bleeding in through the cracks. But the darker the room, the brighter my thoughts. My brain rifled through old drawers of memory, dragging out every last grievance like moth-bitten laundry hung in the open air. When Caleb was just 2 months old, Madison's college friend came to visit. I was walking him gently around the living room, rocking him to sleep. She frowned and said, "Grace, that's not the right way to hold him. Studies say it could affect his spine. She didn't raise her voice, but the room was quiet. Sounded like a scolding. Her friend gave an awkward little smile, and I stood there feeling like someone had dumped a bucket of water over me. I raised my own child. Now I was being lectured in front of strangers on how to hold my grandson. I didn't say a word. Just shifted my grip. But from that day forward I held Caleb differently, tentative, guarded, afraid she'd call me out again. And then there was my birthday. I wanted to keep it simple. Bought some beef and mushrooms, planned a few of my best dishes. Frank even picked up a bottle of my favorite wine from town. Madison walked in, sniffed the air and wrinkled her nose. "Grace, this is so greasy. I told you, we're doing clean eating now. Less oil, less salt." She pulled out her phone and ordered takeout. A salad. Grilled chicken breast. Frank and I sat at the table while she scrolled and chewed. The meal I made went untouched. My birthday, reduced to eye rolls and a delivery order. Each of these memories, each wound, was like a knife hidden under the blanket. You didn't feel them in the daylight. But at night when you turned they jabbed you right in the ribs. I used to tell myself, just be patient. Do it for the family. For your son. But I've come to learn, patience isn't a cure. It's a slow poison. The more you swallow, the more invisible you become. I thought I was holding the family together. In truth, I was just feeding a beast that only grew hungrier. No. I had no lines left to cross. No boundaries left to give. The next day Madison changed tactics. When I didn't answer her calls or reply to her texts, she sent in her mother. Linda Ellis. She called herself a retired education consultant, once the vice principal of some public high school, and everything about her voice always carried a hint of superiority. So when my phone lit up with her name, I didn't expect a conversation. I expected a performance. A carefully calibrated pressure campaign, disguised as family discussion. When I picked up, her voice was smoother than Madison's, but that smug undertone, like a principal convinced of her own moral high ground, came through loud and clear. "Hi Grace, it's Madison's mother Linda." Measured, pleasant, yet every word wrapped in a condescending veil. "I know things have gotten a little tense, but we as elders, well, we have to be understanding with young people, don't we? Eric and Madison are under a lot of stress, and taking a short trip like this could really help their relationship. You know, give them time to reconnect." I leaned against the kitchen doorway, listening to her spin marriage maintenance, and understanding, like it was gospel. Almost made me laugh. Understanding? Where was this understanding when they booked the flights and the resort without a single conversation with us? We weren't the ones who stopped them from going. Did we rip up their passports? Bolt shut their luggage? "Linda," I said, my tone even, "we've never opposed their vacation. We understand the importance of rest. But Caleb is their child. Not ours. It's their responsibility to make arrangements for him, not ours. And frankly, using my money to fund their trip was not okay." There was a beat of silence. She clearly hadn't expected me to come in that directly. "Well, that may be true technically," she said, her voice tightening, "but Caleb is still so young. He can't be left alone. You're the grandparents. Surely you can't stand by and let him be without care. And come on, Grace. You're both retired. You've got the time. Helping a little. Isn't that part of supporting the next generation?" Madison grew up comfortable, yes. She's not used to struggle. Raising a child is new territory for her. I almost laughed out loud. She's unfamiliar with struggle? And what? Was I born with a baby in one hand and a diaper manual in the other? I wasn't trained to be a mother either. I figured it out like all women do, messy, painful, real. "Linda," I said, calm as ever, "we raised Eric. That was our responsibility and we did it. Now we just want to live quietly. That's not too much to ask." Her voice sharpened just a touch. "But Grace, don't you think it gives you peace of mind to see Eric and Madison doing well? As for the mortgage, young people today are under so much pressure. You and Frank have the means. Isn't it just good parenting to give them a hand? If they fall behind on that loan, it'll affect Caleb too. Surely you don't want that to happen." And there it was, her brand of moral logic. Sacrifice yourself for the illusion of a stable next generation. "Linda," I said, cutting through her softness like a blade, "the money we have? That's for our medicine, our food, our future. We're not a bank. We're not a charitable foundation. We don't owe anyone a dime. If they couldn't afford the mortgage, they never should have bought that house. Life is made of choices, not fantasies. And Caleb's future is their job to secure, not our excuse to be used. Silence. I could picture her face, tight-lipped, disapproving, and completely unable to argue without sounding selfish. Well, she finally snapped, her tone suddenly icy, I guess there's nothing left to discuss. If you're going to be this cold-hearted, I suppose we'll just have to see how this plays out. I just hope you won't regret it later. And she hung up. I stared at the dark phone screen, and for a second, the stillness around me felt almost sacred. Regret? If there's anything I regret, it's pouring so much of myself into a relationship built on uneven ground. It's all the times I let guilt silence my instincts. All the times I fed someone else's entitlement because I couldn't bear to be called selfish. Before I could even set the phone down, another alert flashed across the screen. A forwarded voice message. From Eric. Madison's profile picture and the all-too-familiar caption, "You received a voice message." I tapped it, and her voice came shrieking through the speaker, cracked with fake tears, sharp enough to cut. "Eric, are you hearing this? Just listen to what your parents are saying. They don't care about us at all. They can't stand seeing us happy. They've abandoned us. Abandoned Caleb. Is that what this is now? I don't want a family like this anymore. If you can't fix this, we're done. You take the kid, I'll take the house. I want to see how you survive that." She sobbed, wailed, screamed like it was a performance for an award. But I didn't feel a thing. Not sympathy. Not guilt. Because that wasn't communication. It was emotional blackmail. And I wasn't that Grace anymore. Not the Grace who flinched, folded, and forgave. I thought Madison's unhinged voicemail was the lowest she could sink. I was wrong. She had more in her, worse, uglier. That morning, I got a call from the local Department of Social Services. I thought maybe it was about a community volunteer event or health survey. But the moment the woman on the other end spoke, I went ice cold. "Hello, is this Ms. Grace Whitman? We're calling to verify a few discrepancies on the joint guardianship paperwork for you and Caleb Whitman. There are some mismatched entries and we'll need an in-person signature to correct them." I froze. "What guardianship agreement?" "It was submitted by your daughter-in-law, Madison Ellis." The woman on the phone replied politely, as if reading off a script. "According to the child care assistance application she filed, you're listed as a co-guardian, which authorized the government to deposit a portion of the benefits into Caleb Whitman's account, now officially registered under your name as well." I stood in the middle of the kitchen, the phone shaking in my hand. She used my name? She forged a guardianship agreement and filed for state child welfare benefits. Under my identity? After I'd made it abundantly clear I was done, she still had the audacity to pull me into this mess? "I have never signed any guardianship documents," I said, enunciating every word. "Nor have I ever authorized her to file anything in my name. I need you to immediately freeze any accounts linked to that application and email me copies of every document she submitted. I will be involving legal counsel." "Yes, ma'am," the woman responded quickly. "We'll begin that process right away." I hung up, my pulse thudding against my ribs, not from fear but from fury. This wasn't just family conflict anymore. This was identity theft. Fraud. She hadn't just crossed the line, she lit it on fire and danced over the ashes. What, was I supposed to be a grandmother for life with no way out? No voice, no exit, just silently exploited until I died? I opened my laptop, pulled up the email address David had given me last Christmas. Frank's college friend's nephew, now a legal advisor with the state's Office of Public Affairs. As I recorded a voice memo recapping the phone call, I typed the subject line for my email. Subject: Request for legal review, identity misuse and benefit fraud. Within the hour, David called me back. "Grace, if this is accurate, it falls under Social Security fraud. You'll need to start gathering documentation. I'll loop in someone from legal aid. Are you planning to press charges?" I sat down at the dining table, where I had already laid out a neat stack of documents. The mortgage cosigner withdrawal. The healthcare payment revocation. The retirement fund freeze. Each one prepared for the day she forgot I was a human being, not a wallet on legs. "I'm not the one starting this, David," I said coolly. "She just treated me like I was already dead." After the call, I logged into my social media account. Right on cue, there it was. Madison's signature move. A long, anonymous post just vague enough to be legally safe but venomous in tone. I've never seen someone so heartless. My ML dropped everything and ran the day before we were supposed to travel, abandoning a child too young to understand why. She says she wants to live for herself. But did she ever stop and think that the day you become a mother, your life is no longer your own? The likes and comments rolled in like waves. Some agreed. Some piled on. One even wrote, "What's wrong with this generation of grandparents?" I didn't reply. I simply took screenshots and forwarded every single one to David. Chain of evidence intact. Around 4 p.m. Frank came in from town, his face unreadable. "Carla at the grocery store said your daughter-in-law's post is all over the local groups. She's hinting you stole Caleb's trust fund. Says you ran off and left them stranded." I smiled. "She can call me heartless all she wants," I said. "But she's about to find out. The law is even colder than I am." I picked up my phone and dialed Eric. This time I didn't wait for him to speak. "Eric, tell your wife to delete every single post she made about me. Have her contact the Department of Social Services and formally withdraw her fraudulent application. And she is to cooperate with the investigation. If she doesn't, I will file official charges against Madison Ellis for identity theft and Social Security fraud. She used my name. That alone is grounds for prosecution." On the other end, nothing but breath. Then finally his voice brittle and low. "Mom, do you really have to do this?" "She left me no choice," I said. "And you helped her walk off that cliff. I warned you. You don't push a mother to the edge and expect her to stay your servant. You don't have to love me. But you will stop using me." And I hung up before he could say another word. The next day I received an email from David. Case accepted. Madison would be served a formal notice of investigation within 30 days. If the allegations proved true, she'd face a fine between $5,000 and $10,000, plus a 5-year stain on her public credit record. Later that afternoon, Frank got word from Madison's sister. "She's been placed on official leave," she told him. The company cited identity theft and fraud allegations. They asked her not to show up at HQ for the time being. I nodded. Said nothing. She climbed that ladder all by herself. She should be grateful I didn't kick it out from under her and let her land face first. Around 3 o'clock the Social Security office called again. "Ms. Whitman, we've reached a preliminary conclusion regarding the falsified guardianship claim you reported. A formal hearing will be scheduled. If the other party refuses to comply, the matter will be handed over to the state prosecutor's office." "Thank you for letting me know," I said calmly. "If I'm needed in court, I'll be there." And in that moment I knew. I'd won. At exactly 8 p.m. Eric called. I put him on speaker, made sure Frank was there to hear everything. He sounded like a schoolboy caught cheating on an exam. "Mom, Madison's lost it. She dropped Caleb off at my office today. She said, 'Didn't your parents say the kid's your responsibility now? Then you raise him.' She turned off her phone. I don't know where she is. But I was wondering if maybe, just for a few days, you could take Caleb." I cut him off before he could get any further. "Eric, let's get something straight. Caleb is your son. I did not adopt him." He paused. "Mom, just this once. I really have no other option." "You should have thought of that when she slammed the door and walked out," I said coldly. "Eric, the day I canceled your secondary card, I made a decision. Your mess is no longer my concern. You chose this marriage. You chose this life. You carry it." His voice started to rise, tinged with desperation. "But Mom, he's your grandson." "I know," I said, tone steady. "That's exactly why you need to be his father. Not me. I'm not a saint. I'm not your backup plan. Not anymore. Starting tonight, I won't be answering any more calls that begin with, 'Can you help?' Whatever storm the two of you brought down on yourselves, I won't be caught holding the umbrella." I paused, let it sink in, then said, calm, final, clear. "You want to be a husband? Stop being a mama's boy. And if you can't manage that, don't expect me to keep being your mother." And then I hung up. No room for tears. No space for excuses. No oxygen left for guilt. I opened my contact list and deleted Eric's number. Then Madison's. Then Linda's. Blocked every account they'd ever used to reach me. I went into settings and turned on Do Not Disturb, permanently. This was the last time I pressed pause on their chaos. From now on, if they scream I shut the door. If they fall I don't catch. If they break I watch. No comments. No interventions. No lifelines. From this day forward, anyone who dares to weaponize family, to bind me again, I'll make sure they understand. I'm not your mother. I'm the reckoning you never saw coming. This story ends here.